It's a question that's haunted the world since 1945. What exactly would World War III look like? For decades, the very phrase has conjured images of mushroom clouds, global devastation, and a war so catastrophic it might end human civilization itself. And yet, despite these fears, the world has gone more than 70 years without a direct, large-scale military conflict between the great powers. So why has this been the case? What would actually have to happen for World War III to break out today? And if it did, how might it unfold? To understand this, we first need to revisit the lessons of the past. The 20th century saw two world wars, each more destructive than the last. The first was fueled by empires, alliances, and new technologies like machine guns and tanks. The second was shaped by the rise of fascism, the spread of totalitarian ideologies, and all-encompassing industrial warfare. When the dust settled after 1945, the world was left with two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, adopting an entirely new stance, mutually assured destruction. This doctrine, developed in the early months of the Cold War, was simple. Each side possessed enough nuclear weapons to wipe out the other many times over. The result was a precarious balance in which neither dared strike first, lest their own destruction follow. Paradoxically, the prospect of such an unimaginable war made large-scale conflict less, not more, likely. Instead, both superpowers engaged in proxy wars, espionage, and a global arms race, but stopped short of open war. That balance seems far shakier today. The world's powers are more diverse and the alliances more complicated. The United States, still the leading military force, faces a resurgent Russia and a rapidly modernizing China. In recent years, regional powers like India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and North Korea have acquired or developed advanced military capabilities, including, in several cases, nuclear weapons. This shifting landscape means that the trigger for a global war could come from almost anywhere. If a major conflict did begin, it likely wouldn't start with nuclear missiles flying overhead. More likely, it would begin as a regional crisis, much as previous world wars did. Imagine, for example, a sudden escalation in the South China Sea, where Chinese and American warships routinely sail in disputed waters, or a flashpoint on the border between NATO and Russia, as seen previously in Ukraine or the Baltics. Even a misfired missile or an accidental naval collision could set events spiraling out of control. In today's world, the early stages would look very different from those of the past. Before the first tank ever crossed a border, we would likely see cyber attacks on infrastructure, blackouts in major cities, downed communication networks, and mass disruptions to financial and government systems. Satellites could be targeted, blinding opposing militaries and disrupting GPS signals used by civilians everywhere. Automated and unmanned weapons, drones, autonomous submarines, AI-guided missiles might strike before any human soldier ever fired a shot. But ultimately, if the fighting escalated, conventional forces would move in. Aircraft carrier groups, armored divisions, and air power would clash in hotspots across Eurasia and the Pacific. Civilian populations would feel the impact almost immediately, not just from the fighting, but from disrupted trade, refugee flows, and shortages of basic goods. The world's interconnected economies, having made the previous decades so prosperous, would now spread the pain far and wide. The biggest and most terrifying question remains, could nuclear weapons be used? No one can say for certain. All nuclear-armed states maintain arsenals and doctrines designed to prevent their use, only to be used as a last resort. But in the chaos of a major war, miscommunication or desperation could create scenarios where leaders see no alternative, especially if their own survival or that of their regime is at stake. It's not just state actors either. The chaos of a major war could make it easier for non-state actors, terrorist organizations, rogue military units, extremist groups, to seize or use weapons of mass destruction. Major cities, transportation hubs, and population centers would be at enormous risk. In the aftermath, assuming civilization survived, the world would be irrevocably changed. Economies would be in ruins, technological infrastructure shattered, millions displaced or killed. International organizations and alliances would likely be reshaped or swept away. And the environment, already fragile, might sustain damage far beyond anything seen in past wars. Yet history offers a glimmer of hope. Since 1945, humanity has succeeded in avoiding total war despite dozens of flashpoints and crises. Nuclear deterrence, while frightening, has worked so far. Diplomacy, international law, and economic interdependence, flawed as they are, have provided enough restraint to keep the worst at bay. World War III is not inevitable. Its risk rises and falls with politics, technology, and the choices of leaders and citizens. But understanding the scale and complexity of such a conflict reminds us why so much energy has gone into preventing it. If catastrophe is to be avoided, the vigilance and caution of the previous century must remain our guide, even as the world changes around us.